The night in Buenos Aires was enveloped in a cool, gentle breeze, while the golden lights of the luxurious restaurant El Cielo twinkled, reflecting the splendor of the place. Inside, the murmurs of lively conversation and infectious laughter echoed off the walls, adorned with contemporary art. The atmosphere exuded sophistication, with elegantly arranged tables, pristine white tablecloths, and uniformed waiters who moved deftly among the guests. However, behind the opulence was an atmosphere of exclusivity that seemed to exclude anyone who didn't fit the mold of wealth and status. Valentina, a 30-year-old woman, entered the restaurant with hurried steps, her body bowed by her advanced pregnancy. The weight of the life she carried within her made every movement a challenge. But the urgency drove her. His pale face and wide eyes betrayed his distress. She looked around, noticing the judgmental gazes that followed her like shadows, while the elegantly dressed customers watched her with expressions of disdain. "Please, someone help me," Valentina begged, her shaky voice almost lost amid the sound of her fork clinking against her plate. The maître d', Javier, a middle-aged man with a stern look, hesitated. For a brief moment he considered whether he should call security to remove the woman from that carefully shaped environment. However, when he noticed the look of despair on his face, he decided to give him a chance. "Lady, this is not the place for you," Javier said, his voice firm but not without a touch of compassion. "What is happening?" I'm in labor," Valentina stuttered, a wave of pain going through her. "I need a place to rest, please." The murmurs of customers intensified, some exchanging knowing looks, while others walked away in disdain. A young blonde, Lucia, who was surrounded by a group of friends laughing and chatting about her new jewelry collection, gave a curious look and then walked away, completely ignoring the scene unfolding before her. "Look, another drama," she commented, with a mocking tone, while her friends laughed, without noticing the seriousness of the situation. "Come on, you can stay here," Javier said finally, indicating a secluded table. "But we need to be quick." Valentina felt a mix of relief and embarrassment as she followed Javier, her bare feet almost dragging on the polished floor. She barely had the strength to stand up, but the determination to protect her baby kept her going. As soon as she settled on the table, a new jolt of pain hit her, and she doubled over, pressing her hand against her stomach. Concern began to spread among the waiters and nearby customers, but many still preferred to remain unaware of the situation. "You're going to be fine. Just breathe," Javier said, trying to calm her, while watching the inquisitive looks of the other customers. "You'll go get water and some towels." Valentina nodded, but her anxiety grew. The pain was intense, and his mind was confused. She remembered how she got there, the fight with her son's father, the lack of support, and the loneliness that accompanied it. "Why is this happening to me?" she thought, feeling lost in a sea of uncertainty. Meanwhile, Lucia continued to talk animatedly with her friends, unaware of the human drama unfolding just a few meters away. "And this one, a rarity, with diamonds of the best quality," he exclaimed, holding up a bracelet with a dazzling shine. "Don't you think it's perfect for my birthday party?" The friends agreed, admiring the young woman's ostentation. "You always know how to rock, Lucia," praised one of them, while another applauded, without noticing the woman on the verge of collapse. Valentina, with her heart racing, tried to ignore the laughter and frivolity around her. The pain intensified, and she closed her eyes, searching for strength that seemed to be slipping away. "Valentina, here you are," said Javier, returning with a glass of water and towels. "Drink. It will help." He watched her with concern. "If you need anything else, let me know." "Thank you," Valentina murmured, gratitude mixed with anguish. Time seemed to drag by as she tried to focus on breathing, but the pain was unrelenting. At the next table, Lucia continued to talk about her glamorous life, without noticing the suffering that was unfolding just a few steps away. "You can't imagine what it's like to be the center of attention," Lucia said, with a confident smile. "The paparazzi are always after me, and this new jewelry designer is giving me everything for free. I can't even believe it." "You're lucky, Lucia," replied a friend, admiring her. "Just don't forget us when you're in Hollywood." Valentina, with her mind in turmoil, tried to ignore the superficial conversation. "Why can't I have a normal life?" she thought, frustration mixing with fear. The pain intensified, and, although he was in such a glamorous place, he felt invisible, a shadow lost in the world of appearances. "Miss, are you okay?" asked a waitress as she approached, noticing the pained expression on Valentina's face. "Need help?" Valentina looked at the waitress, her eyes filled with tears. "Please, I need help. I'm in labor." The waitress, realizing the gravity of the situation, quickly turned to Javier. "We need to call an ambulance," he exclaimed, his urgent tone making the customers finally pay attention. "No, no, no!" Valentina shouted, her voice echoing in the sudden silence that took over the place. "I don't want to be taken to a hospital. I need to stay here." The disapproving looks from customers have now become looks of curiosity. Javier, realizing that the situation was getting out of control, approached Valentina. "Mom, you need medical assistance. It's not safe here." "But I have nowhere to go," Valentina confessed, her voice breaking. "Please, just let me stay. I just need a moment." The looks of contempt began to turn into expressions of concern, but there were still those who didn't care. Lucia, now beginning to realize what was happening, looked at Valentina with a mixture of curiosity and discomfort. "What's happening to her?" he asked, his voice raised enough for everyone to hear. "She's in labor," Javier replied, his voice firm. "We need help." "This is no place for that," Lucia murmured, but there was a new tension in her tone, a growing awareness of the reality around her. Valentina, breathing heavily, could no longer bear the intensifying pain. The world around him was turning into a blur, and the only thing clear was the need for protection for the being he carried. "Please," Valentina begged, her voice barely above a whisper, "just help me." The room fell silent, and for a brief moment, the glamour and superficiality of El Cielo were replaced by a more human feeling of solidarity, as eyes focused on Valentina, the woman who brought a new life within her. Valentina sat at the table alone, her exhausted body finally finding some small relief, even if it was temporary. The atmosphere at El Cielo was tense, as if the air was filled with murmurs and looks of contempt. The glamour of the restaurant seemed distant, almost irrelevant, given its condition. She observed the customers around her who, with their elegant attire and lively conversations, seemed to live in a completely different world from her own. The shine of the crystal glasses and the aroma of sophisticated dishes could not hide the feeling of distrust that permeated the environment. Javier, the maitre d', upon noticing Valentina's condition, approached her with a look that mixed concern and a touch of compassion. He knew that the woman did not belong in that luxury space, but he also understood that no one should be rejected at such a critical moment. "Please, feel free. You can rest here for a bit," he said, gesturing for her to sit down. Valentina nodded her thanks, her words catching in her throat. As Valentina tried to recover, her ears picked up the conversation between Lucia and a man she didn't know. He had a magnetic presence, and the way he spoke seemed to attract the attention of everyone around him. Lucia, radiant in her designer dress, was clearly worried about what Diego was saying. "You can't just come here and talk about this. Do you know what this can do?" she exclaimed, her voice shaking with tension. Diego, with a penetrating look, replied calmly, "But it's the truth, Lucia. Your family is involved in something much bigger than you realize, and I cannot remain silent while this happens." Valentina, intrigued, leaned in a little closer to listen. Curiosity dominated her, and for a moment she forgot about her pain and the fatigue that consumed her. "Are you insinuating that I am an accomplice? That I knew all this?" Lucia protested, her voice rising to an indignant tone. "You don't understand what's at stake. If this gets out, it will be the end of everything. My family. My name. And what do you intend to do? Continue living in this bubble of lies?" Diego interrupted, the intensity of his words making some customers around pay attention. Valentina felt like an intruder in a conversation that seemed much more important than her own life at that moment. Their words echoed in her mind, revealing a world of secrets and betrayals that she could barely comprehend. What could be so devastating? What was Lucia hiding? As she tried to put together the pieces of the puzzle that was forming, Valentina felt that, even in her vulnerable situation, there was something bigger at play, something that connected her to those people, even if indirectly. The conversation between Lucia and Diego continued, but exhaustion finally began to take over Valentina. Her heavy eyes began to close, and before she could resist, she fell asleep, tiredness overcoming her curiosity. The murmur of conversation in the background became a distant hum as she sank into a deep and necessary sleep. Time passed, but the tranquility that Valentina expected did not last long. A sudden bang woke her up, and she found herself surrounded by curious and worried looks. The noise seemed to have come from a nearby table where Lucia and Diego were engaged in a heated argument. "How could you do this to me, Diego? You know what's at stake," Lucia shouted, her voice full of despair. Valentina, still confused and dazed, tried to understand what was happening. She stood up slowly, her body as heavy as lead, but curiosity compelled her to come closer. Lucia was pale, and Diego looked frustrated, his hands gesturing intensely. "I didn't ask you to look for me. You should have left that in the past," Diego counterattacked, his voice firm, almost angry. "But now that you know, you can't just ignore it. The truth will come out anyway." Valentina, now fully awake, noticed that the tension between them had become palpable. Other customers were turning around, some looking amused, others worried, as if they were watching a play. Influencer Mariana, who was at a nearby table, already had her cell phone in hand, ready to capture every moment of the scene. "You can't just throw that in my face, Diego. You don't know what this could do to my life," Lucia protested, tears forming in her eyes. Valentina felt a wave of empathy for the young woman, even if she didn't know what was really happening. "What are you going to do? Continue with this game? With this farce?" "The truth always comes out, Lucia. And when that happens, you will have no one by your side," Diego replied with a coldness that made Valentina shudder. Valentina looked around, feeling the weight of the words. The conversation wasn't just about Lucia and Diego. It was about a world of lies, a game in which everyone was a pawn, and she, even without wanting to, was about to become part of it. The idea that there might be no secret that connected her to that wealthy family intrigued and terrified her at the same time. As the voices grew louder, the tension in the restaurant was on the verge of collapse. Valentina knew she needed to do something, but what? How could you get involved in something so complicated? Deep down, his fight was for a safe place, a moment of peace. But life didn't seem to give him that option. As she thought about her situation, a sharp pain struck her, forcing her to refocus on the present. She remembered her pregnancy, the baby she was carrying, and her struggle to bring a new being into the world amidst so much confusion. The life that was beginning to form inside her was all that mattered, but now it seemed to be entwined in a web of secrets and scandals that she could barely understand. The turmoil around her grew, and Valentina began to realize that somehow she was about to be pulled into the eye of this storm. What should have been a moment of rest had transformed into something much more complex and involving. She needed answers, and even if it was the last place she wanted to be, maybe El Cielo would be the place where everything would reveal itself. "You can't just walk away and leave all this behind, Lucia," Diego exclaimed, his voice sharp. "Your family needs to face the consequences of their actions." Valentina felt her heart accelerate. What did he mean by that? What was so serious in Lucia's life that it could affect her too? And as she questioned her role in this story, the reality became increasingly clear. She could no longer keep her distance. It was time to discover the truth, not just about Lucia and Diego, but about herself and the future that awaited her. Valentina woke up with a start, her eyes wide, while the sound of glasses breaking echoed through the luxurious atmosphere of the El Cielo restaurant. The soft light from the hanging lamps and the aroma of exquisite dishes failed to calm his racing heart. She sat up, still a little dazed, and saw Lucia, the rich young woman, standing there, arguing furiously with Diego. Lucia's face was flushed with anger, and her hands gestured frantically, as if she were trying to push away an unbearable truth. "You have no idea what you're talking about, Diego. This is crazy," Lucia shouted, her sharp voice echoing through the sophisticated space, attracting the attention of several customers. Valentina felt butterflies in her stomach as she realized that the argument was intensifying, and tension hung in the air like a heavy cloud. Diego, in turn, maintained a firm and determined stance. "I know more than you think, Lucia. Your family is not what you think, and I will not stay silent about it," he replied, his voice low but full of intensity. Valentina was intrigued, feeling that something much bigger was at stake. The atmosphere around her seemed to transform, and she couldn't help but wonder what secrets were being revealed here in front of everyone. Mariana, the famous influencer, wasted no time and started recording the scene, her cell phone in hand, capturing every word and every expression. Valentina could see the glow on the device's screen, the blue light reflecting off her face, while Mariana smiled, as if she was about to post the viral content. That scene, which should have been a moment of privacy and confrontation, was turning into a public spectacle. "You're just trying to intimidate me, Diego. We'll not make it. I'm not afraid of you," Lucia retorted, her voice rising even more. The surrounding tables were full of curious looks, some expressing shock, others amusement, but all clearly involved in this unexpected drama. Valentina, with a heavy heart, began to stand up, feeling that she had seen enough. She didn't want to get into any more trouble, and the idea of being the center of attention again terrified her. However, as she turned to leave the room, A sudden movement in her stomach made her hesitate. A sudden pop echoed inside him, and in an instant he realized that his water had broken. The silence that followed was deafening. All eyes turned to Valentina, and the atmosphere of tension that previously hovered over Lucia and Diego now spread throughout the room. Valentina's face contorted in pain and surprise. "Oh no," she murmured, placing her hand on her stomach, trying to control what was happening. Mariana, who was a few steps away, immediately abandoned the discussion between the two to focus on Valentina. "Guys, this is incredible. I can't lose this," she said, still recording, as if the scene unfolding before her was a golden opportunity for her social media. Valentina, amidst the chaos, began to breathe deeply. "I need help," he whispered, but his voice was drowned out by the growing hubbub of the customers who didn't know whether to stand up or stay still, as if they were watching a dramatic film. The looks became more intense, and the atmosphere that had previously been one of scandal now became one of concern. "Can someone call an ambulance?" Valentina asked, her voice now louder, as she tried to keep herself upright. But the feeling of urgency overcame her, and she knew she didn't have much time. Her body was preparing for a moment that would change her life forever. Lucia, who was about to walk away from Diego, froze when she realized the gravity of the situation. Her gaze softened, and the anger that had previously dominated her face gave way to an expression of empathy. Are you in labor?" she asked, her voice now low and worried. "Yes, it seems so," Valentina replied, feeling the tears start to slide down her cheeks. "Please, someone help me." Diego, who until then had been focused on Lucia, turned to Valentina, his eyes now filled with genuine concern. "I will help you. Where is the manager?" he said, taking the initiative and quickly moving towards the reception. "Don't worry, I'll stay with you," Lucia declared, her maternal instincts coming to the fore. Valentina looked at her, a little surprised. That young woman who seemed so distant and self-centered was now offering to help her, and it felt surreal. "Why are you doing this?" Valentina asked, her voice still shaking. What was happening here was unexpected, and the transition from antagonism to solidarity left her confused. "Because no one deserves to go through this alone, especially in a place like this," Lucia replied, her expression softened with concern. "Let's find somewhere more private." Valentina nodded, still feeling the waves of pain as the situation around her seemed to spin. The room was in a frenzy, but now she had an unexpected ally at her side. Lucia took Valentina by the hand, and together they quickly headed to the corner of the room, where there was a more isolated space. "Diego, call a doctor, quickly!" Lucia shouted, and Diego immediately answered the call, disappearing towards the entrance of the restaurant. Valentina was panting, but Lucia's presence at her side made her feel a little safer. "You don't need to do that, I can," she started to say, but Lucia interrupted her. "No, you need help, and I'm here. We're not going to let this turn into a spectacle," Lucia said, her determination growing by the moment. Valentina looked at the young woman, realizing that, even in the midst of the confusion, there was a spark of solidarity there. The murmurs of the other customers began to calm down, while most of them moved away, respecting the momentary privacy of the two women. The air was charged with emotion, and Valentina felt that, despite all the tension, there was something deeper forming between them, an unexpected connection. "You can do it, Valentina," Lucia encouraged her, holding her hand firmly. "We will get through this together." And at that moment, Valentina realized that, even in the midst of chaos, there was hope. The atmosphere at El Cielo was in an uproar. The clinking of cutlery and the murmur of conversation mixed with the sound of soft music playing in the background, but the tension in the air was palpable. Valentina, breathing heavily, was at the center of the scene, fighting the labor pains that consumed her. The cold marble floor contrasted with the heat emanating from her body, and she felt increasingly lost in the chaos. Javier, the maitre d', made a quick decision. With a firm gesture, he crouched down beside Valentina, maintaining a calm and resolute gaze. "Stay with me, please. You'll make it," he said, his voice low and reassuring as he helped settle her onto the floor. "We need towels and hot water." "Someone please!" he shouted, catching the attention of some of the restaurant staff, who, stunned, began to move towards him. Mariana, the influencer, wasted no time. With her cell phone in hand, she approached, the camera recording every detail of the dramatic scene. "This is going to be epic," she muttered to herself, with a mischievous smile on her lips. "People will love seeing a woman giving birth in a fancy restaurant. It's going to blow up on social media." Valentina heard the sound of the record button and cast a tired look at Mariana, who seemed more interested in capturing the scene than actually helping. "Please don't do this," Valentina managed to say, her voice cracking between contractions. "I just need help." But Mariana was so absorbed in her own world that she ignored the call. "Calm down, Valentina, you'll be fine. Just breathe. Look at me and concentrate," said Javier, trying to direct the woman's attention to his voice, while the commotion around her increased. Amid all the chaos, an unexpected movement occurred. Lucia, until then oblivious to the situation, watched with a mixture of discomfort and curiosity. The heated argument she had had with Diego still reverberated in her mind, but now, faced with that scene, she felt a change in her heart. Something inside her compelled her to act. "What do you need?" he asked, approaching Valentina with a determined look. Valentina, surprised by the change in attitude, looked at Lucia, unsure. I don't know. I can't do this alone," she said, her voice cracking with pain. "You are not alone." "Let's do this together," Lucia replied, crouching down next to Valentina. "What can I do to help you?" "I need you to hold my hand," Valentina asked, her expression contorting in a mix of pain and relief. Lucia hesitated for a moment, but then took Valentina's hand, intertwining their fingers. The touch was unexpectedly comforting. The two women, so different in many ways, now shared an intimate and vulnerable moment. Meanwhile, Javier moved quickly, instructing other employees. "Someone! Bring clean towels and hot water! We're going to need all of this now," he ordered, his voice full of urgency. The panic began to fade, giving way to a strange camaraderie among those there. Female solidarity began to break down social barriers that previously seemed insurmountable. The background music was replaced by the sound of surprised screams and murmurs of scandal. Customers, who had previously looked on with contempt, now observed the scene with a mixture of fascination and horror. The restaurant, which used to be a symbol of sophistication, has turned into a stage of life and death. "Valentina, you are doing great. Take a deep breath," Lucia said, trying to encourage the woman. "Remember, you are not alone." "I don't know if I can," Valentina replied, the pain growing by the second. "It's so hard." "You can." "I'm here with you," Lucia insisted, her voice firm. Those words sounded like a mantra, and Valentina began to focus on her breathing, trying to follow the rhythm that Lucia suggested. Restaurant security finally arrived, but upon seeing the scene, they hesitated to act. Confusion reigned, and they couldn't just stop what was happening. Javier, noticing the hesitation, got up and walked towards them. "No, don't call an ambulance. She needs to give birth, here and now. Remain calm and help prepare whatever is necessary," he ordered, his authoritarian stance causing everyone to mobilize. Valentina felt a new wave of pain, and with a scream, pulled Lucia's hand tightly. "It hurts! It's hurting a lot!" She was in her own world, surrounded by a storm of emotions and sensations. I know. Breathe, Valentina. Remember to breathe and push." "You can do it," Lucia responded, her own heart racing, but determined to help this woman who, under normal circumstances, would have been just a stranger. Meanwhile, Mariana continued recording, her eyes shining with the possibility of viral content. But somewhere far away in her mind, a small flame of empathy began to ignite. The scene was powerful, and even though she was there looking for clicks and views, Valentina's struggle touched something deeper within her. "Who knew a fancy dinner could turn into such a human moment?" she murmured, almost to herself, and for a brief moment, her gaze softened, even though the camera was still recording. "Come on, Valentina. You're almost there. Just a little more," Javier encouraged, while preparing the towels that finally arrived. The atmosphere was charged with expectation and tension, and the solidarity between the women was palpable. Valentina, feeling encouraged, began to push with all her might. "I can't stop. I need to keep going," she shouted, her eyes fixed on Lucia, who never looked away, remaining firmly at her side. "That's right. You are strong." "Continues," Lucia exclaimed, determined. Valentina's pain seemed to echo through the restaurant, and all eyes were now focused on these two women who, in the midst of a chaotic situation, found purpose. The restaurant, which once symbolized a world of luxury and ostentation, now pulsed with life and struggle. The moment became increasingly intense, and a new connection was being forged between Valentina and Lucia, an unexpected alliance that defied social norms. Just when everything seemed about to culminate in a dramatic climax, the reality of the moment rumbled through the minds of everyone present. What should have been a simple upper-class dinner had turned into a spectacle of humanity, revealing the fragility and strength that reside in each of us. Valentina, with courage she never knew she possessed, was about to give birth, not just to a new life, but to a new narrative that would forever change the perception of everyone involved. And so, the restaurant El Cielo became the scene of a miracle. The sound of the city of Buenos Aires turned into a distant echo as Valentina, breathless and exhausted, let herself be carried away by the wave of emotions that invaded the atmosphere of the luxurious restaurant El Cielo. The pain from the contractions still pulsed through her body, but the adrenaline of the situation kept her alert. Staring at the polished marble floor, she felt like an intruder in that world of glamour and ostentation, where smiles were exchanged like coins, and compassion seemed an inaccessible luxury. Javier, the restaurant's maitre d', positioned himself next to her, his expression mixing concern and a touch of hesitation. "Valentina, you need to focus. Let's do this together," he said, his voice firm but calm. He had become a safe haven amid the emotional storm that enveloped her. The contrast between her impeccable outfit and the chaotic situation was almost surreal. Lucia, who until then had been oblivious to what was going on around her, now approached, her eyes shining with unexpected determination. "I can't believe this is happening." "We need to help," she said, looking at Javier, who nodded. "Yes, we need clean towels and hot water," Javier replied, his voice thick with urgency. He quickly turned towards the kitchen, leaving Valentina and Lucia alone. The rich young woman, who until recently seemed so distant and disconnected from the reality around her, was now there, willing to help a woman she had never met. Meanwhile, the surrounding customers watched the scene with a mixture of shock and curiosity. Looks of disapproval and contempt were mixed with empathy from some. Mariana, the influencer, already had her cell phone in hand, capturing every moment as if it were a spectacle. "This is going to go viral. Imagine the amount of likes I'm going to get," she muttered to herself, not caring about the gravity of the situation. Valentina, feeling the pressure of the contractions, looked at Lucia. I don't know if I can do this. I'm so scared," she confessed, vulnerability showing in her voice. The fear was palpable, but there was something more. A spark of hope lit by the unexpected solidarity between the two women. "You're stronger than you think, Valentina." "I'm here with you," Lucia replied, holding the pregnant woman's hand firmly. "Let's bring this life to the world." The pain increased, and the room seemed to spin around Valentina, each contraction a wave that threw her to unknown waters. With an effort, she leaned against the wall, while Javier returned with everything needed. "Now, Valentina, you needed to push," he directed, his voice echoing with authority. "When I say you push, right?" Valentina nodded, her breathing becoming irregular. Time seemed to drag by, the beat of her heart following the frantic rhythm of her mind. 1, 2, 3. "Now," Javier instructed, and Valentina, with all her strength, pushed. The world around her disappeared. All that was left was a connection between her and her baby, a dance of life and pain. "You are doing great," Lucia exclaimed, her voice full of encouragement. "Just a little longer." Her customers' faces became blurs, murmured conversations turned to a distant hum. Valentina was alone in her fight, but she wasn't truly alone. Finally, in a last-ditch effort, a piercing cry cut through the air. The sound was like music to Valentina's ears, filling her with indescribable relief. Javier quickly welcomed the baby, cleaning him up before placing him in Valentina's arms. "It's a girl," he announced, the gleam of joy in his eyes. Valentina looked at the small creature, her eyes brimming with tears. It all seemed to have been worth it. "She's so beautiful," she whispered, intoxicated with emotion. Lucia, at his side, couldn't contain a smile. But the light atmosphere soon dissipated when Mariana, who had remained silent until then, decided to break the moment. "I have a video of the argument between you and Diego," she said, her voice full of malice. "With this I could ruin your reputation, Lucia, and Valentina won't escape unscathed either." Mariana's words hung in the air, heavy as lead. Lucia's smile disappeared instantly, replaced by an expression of panic. "You cannot do that. What happened between Diego and me is a family matter," she pleaded, her voice shaking. "Ah, but that's exactly what makes it so interesting. The daughter of a rich family and a cheating scandal. And now, a single mother in the middle of it all. It's a full plate for social media," Mariana replied, her gaze mischievous. Valentina, still holding her daughter in her arms, felt a wave of anger building up inside her. "You don't understand anything about what's going on here," she said, her voice firm. "This is not a game for you. It's the lives of people who are struggling with their own demons." "And Who cares? Mariana replied, crossing her arms. People love drama. This will generate views, and views mean money. Javier, sensing the growing tension, intervened. Mariana, this is not the place for you to make your moves. People here need respect and privacy. His voice was relentless, a line of defense amidst the chaos. Valentina looked at Lucia, who was visibly shaken. Lucia, what is happening between you and Diego? What does he know about you? Valentina asked, her curiosity piqued, even as she dealt with the fragility of the new life in her arms. He knows things I would rather keep secret. Secrets that could destroy my family's image, Lucia admitted, her voice low. But it's not just that. He's my brother. Lucia's words fell like a bomb in the air, making Valentina look at her, confused. His brother. How is this possible? It's a long story. But Diego and I were separated when we were children. My family hid this from me, Lucia explained, her voice shaking. And now he has come back to find me. But things are not simple. He wants me to choose between my family and the truth. Valentina, still holding her daughter, felt the weight of the situation increasing. The restaurant, which seemed like a stage for drama and luxuries, now became a battlefield of emotions and revelations. She wondered how a simple moment of desperation could trigger an avalanche of secrets and betrayals. Meanwhile, the other patrons watched expectantly, as if in a theater, absorbing every word, every revelation. The environment, previously marked by superficiality, now pulsed with the intensity of real life. You don't have to do this alone, Lucia, Valentina said, her voice thick with empathy. Life is complicated, but we can't let our secrets destroy us. You have an opportunity to rewrite your story. The tension in the air was palpable, and the scene unfolded like a human drama, where each person present was confronted with their own choices, their own truths. Valentina, now a mother, was at the center of this storm, holding not only her daughter, but also the possibility of a different future. Whatever the case, we have to face this together, Lucia replied, a new gleam of determination in her eyes. The El Cielo restaurant, which was once a symbol of status and ostentation, now became a space of transformation, where lives intertwined and secrets were exposed. And so, under the curious and attentive gaze of everyone around, Valentina saw herself not just as a woman in labor, but as a protagonist of her own story, willing to face whatever the future held. The atmosphere at the El Cielo restaurant was full of tension. After the baby was born, Valentina, now with the little creature in her arms, felt a mixture of relief and confusion. His eyes wandered around the room, where customers observed the scene with a mixture of amazement and curiosity. The newborn's cries echoed, breaking the tense silence that had formed after the climax of the situation. Lucia, still panting after helping with the birth, seemed lost in her own thoughts. The young woman looked at Diego, who had moved away a little, his expression contorted in a mix of joy and pain. It was clear that the words they had exchanged before the commotion had shaken her deeply. The mood in the restaurant had changed, and now everyone was aware that there was more at stake than just a life being born. I can't believe this actually happened, Diego muttered, running a hand through his hair, visibly agitated. Lucia, you need to listen to me. This isn't just a family issue. It's bigger than us. Bigger than us? Lucia turned to him, her voice shaking with emotion. You left me out of your life for years, Diego. And now, Because of this. She gestured to Valentina and the baby, her anger mixing with disbelief. It makes no sense. Valentina, holding her son tightly, felt herself being pulled into a whirlwind of emotions and secrets. She had no idea what was really going on between the two of them, but there was a weight to Diego's words that intrigued her. With an effort, she stood up, still with the baby in her arms, and approached them. "I'm sorry, but what exactly is going on between you two?" Valentina's voice was firm, but her heart was beating quickly. "Who is Diego to you, Lucia?" Lucia hesitated, her expression changing as the weight of the truth began to sink into her consciousness. "Diego. He's my brother," she finally admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "My lost brother. Our family. We have a secret that could change everything." The murmurs of the other customers intensified. Valentina couldn't believe what she had just heard. The man who had argued with Lucia was, in fact, part of her story. What did this mean to her? What else was hidden? "A secret?" Valentina asked, her curiosity overcoming her fear. "What kind of secret?" The tension between the three was palpable, and Diego looked at Valentina, his eyes filled with sudden determination. "The truth is, our family has always hidden something about parenthood. And now, with your son, well, that changes everything. You may hold the key to an inheritance that has been denied to us for far too long." "Heritage?" Valentina felt her stomach drop. "Are you saying that my son is a pawn in a power game between you?" "I won't let that happen." Anger and maternal protection boiled inside her. "That's not how I see it, Valentina," Diego replied, trying to remain calm. "I just want to understand what happened and why our mother decided to separate us. You don't know what it's like to grow up without knowing who you really are." Valentina looked at the baby, who was now sleeping peacefully in her lap. "What if I don't want my son to get involved in this mess? He's not to blame for anything." Lucia, now with tears in her eyes, approached. "Please, Valentina, you don't understand. If they can prove that the child is part of our family, it can give us what has always been ours. And you can have a better life than this." Valentina felt a lump form in her throat. It was a tempting offer, but at the same time, it carried a weight she wasn't sure she could bear. "And what do I get out of this? What will happen if I accept? Do you want me to give my son to you?" "No, it's not that," Lucia exclaimed, desperate. I just want to understand. And if you're willing, we can figure this out together." The scene that unfolded in El Cielo became a true emotional battlefield. With each word exchanged, tensions increased, and customers became spectators of what seemed like a family drama. "You can't just expect me to trust you," Valentina said, her voice shaking. "I don't know you. I just met Lucia, and you, Diego, you were about to ruin her life. How can I believe that this is something worth it?" Diego made a move towards Valentina, his expression softening. "I don't want to ruin anyone's life. I just want to understand what happened. And if it involves you and your son, then I'm willing to do whatever it takes." "I just want to protect my son," Valentina replied, the vulnerability in her voice now exposed. "And if that means staying away from you, then that's how it will be. I can't get involved in any more conflict." The conversation began to attract even more attention from customers. A group of influencers, including Mariana, still with her cell phone in hand, approached, eager for more viral content. The atmosphere was charged, and Valentina felt the pressure increasing. "Valentine, Mariana shouted, interrupting the conversation. You can't just ignore the opportunity to be part of something bigger. The media can make it explode. Think of the fame, the fortune. Fame? Fortune? Valentina replied, her voice now filled with disdain. This isn't about that for me. It's about my son's life. I won't put his future at risk because of a scandal. Lucia made a gesture of despair. Please, just listen. Our family secret could affect the lives of many. If you are a part of this, you can ensure a stable future for your son. I don't want him to suffer like we did. Valentina looked at the baby, who was still sleeping peacefully in her lap. She realized that her life had changed forever. What once seemed like a normal day at the restaurant had turned into a story of betrayal and revelations. I need some time to think, Valentina said, looking from one to the other. I need to understand all of this before making any decisions. Javier, who was watching everything from afar, decided to intervene. Sorry, but this is a restaurant, not a court. We need calm here. He looked at Valentina, his gaze full of empathy. If you need a place to stay, I'm here to help. Valentina smiled slightly, feeling supported. Thank you, Javier. I really appreciate it. As Javier walked away, she realized that her life was about to change irreversibly. The choices he would make from that moment on would not only affect his life, but also that of Lucia, Diego, and, mainly, his son. I'll think about what you told me, Valentina finally stated, determination rising within her. But please understand that my son will always be my priority. Eyes met, and the atmosphere was full of uncertainty, hope, and fear. The future was a blank canvas, and Valentina, now center stage, was about to decide how her story would unfold from there.